Which Sigma 50mm art lens should you get? The EF version with MC11 or go straight to the native version for Sony E-Mount? Stay tuned to find out. If you don't know me already, I go by That One Camera Guy. I do tutorials, guides, and reviews on Sony mirrorless equipment and gear. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on the latest content like this one. And if you can, please smash that like button because it always helps out my channel, and also because this video took a lot of time to test stuff out. Alright, let's go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to go ahead and kind of break down what this video is going to be about. We're going to go over construction, noise, photography. We're going to go over the video autofocusing, and then I'll give you a conclusion and recommendation as far as which lens I would recommend you should get. I'll give you a quick recommendation. I'm only speaking on behalf of these two lenses. There is going to be a video that's going to compare the Zeiss 50-1.4, the 55-1.8, and also include the Rokinon 50mm f1.4 as well. So that video is on the horizon, so make sure you're subscribed so you catch it. But this video is only between these two. And my recommendation, just in case you don't want to watch the whole video, is get the native Sony E-Mount version, hands down. You're not gonna regret it. If you have a mix of Canon cameras, so maybe you still got Canon cameras, right? I would get the EF version. If you're not doing a lot of video, if you're still just doing primarily photos, I would get the Canon EF version because you'll have compatibility with both systems, and the performance is roughly the same for both of them, but there is some slight caveats, okay? So some small minor differences. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this. Construction, solid build. You guys have seen art lenses before. They're a newer set of lenses. I really like the build quality here that Sigma is doing. The biggest difference, and I think the turnoff that a lot of people have, is they feel that they just sort of attached an MC11 adapter onto the end of the lens, which yes and no. I don't think it's like that. I mean, but I guess you can say it that way. There is a big hollow gap in between here where the adapter would go. But in all honesty, I think that this is, it doesn't really bother me personally. Some people don't like the aesthetics of it. I'm kind of the proponent of it. The quality of the lens is good, and you get really good performance out of it. I don't care too much about the design. Overall, it looks really good to me. It looks really sleek, but to each their own, okay? You are going to get a slightly longer lens on this one because of the extension right here, but when you have the MC11 adapter, so if you take a look here, if you have the MC11 adapter, it's going to come out a little bit about the same. So if you have the MC11 adapter with the lens, they're going to come out about the same length. The weight is going to be about 2 pounds, just under that slightly. 77mm filter thread, so these are fairly big lenses. They're not tiny. Definitely fits right at home on a DSLR system because they are DSLR lenses. I think what some of you are probably asking yourself is something like this. This is a really good question. So if you look at this, this is the Zeiss 55-1.8. Look how small this lens is. For a little bit more light, right? For a little bit more light, you're gonna end up getting this honking lens right here. This one is built for mirrorless. This one not so much. This one's built for DSLR. But there will be a video looking at these later on. But it's a question: is it worth getting this bigger lens and mounting it onto the camera? That's something you got to think about. For me personally, I'm not completely bothered by the bigger lenses. I'm really used to the DSLR sizes. It doesn't really bother me, but for other people, it might be an issue. So keep that in mind. All right, now let's go ahead and jump into noise. That's what we're gonna go over next. Hopefully I can show you the video footage at some point in the video, but let's just put it this way. The EF version with the MC11 adapter is noisy, especially in video for sure. In photos, it's audible, but in video, it is very audible. So I'll probably cut in a video clip. All right, so this is test number 1, Aperture's f1.4 Sigma Art EF version. So I'm gonna walk back and forth, see how well it can track my face. And from there, you can definitely hear the noise as it's trying to focus with video autofocusing, for example. So the MC11 version is. This one, on the other hand, for the native version, Sigma worked their magic, and it's almost near silent. You can just sort of feel the shifting of the lens, but it's so subtle. Alright, so now I'm testing out the native Art 50mm lens on Sony E-Mount. I'll do a back and forth testing like I did earlier and see how well that does. I'll do it 3 times and see how the autofocus holds up. With this one, with the MC11 adapter, you can definitely feel the shifting of the lens. It is, like I said, noticeably noisier. Obviously, the adapter is what's causing this, because if you use it on a Canon camera, for example, it's pretty quiet too. It's not too bad. You can definitely feel it, but it's still much quieter versus without the adapter. So that is, to be perfectly honest, that's kind of the kicker. That's the biggest difference between the two. What you're going to find out later is the noise factor. If you are careful about noise and you need that, I would go with the native version. Alright, the next thing I'm going to go over is the photography aspects. I'm not going to show like image quality or anything like that. That's not what this is. It's more on performance. So when you're comparing the EF and the native version, the notes that I wrote down here, the performance is on par with each other. There was a firmware update. I noted this. I was going to mention this. There was a firmware update that Sigma released. Unfortunately, I didn't do a side-by-side test with and without the firmware, but it was supposed to allow you to take more FPS with your lens. But I felt that the speed was fairly similar to both lenses versus this native and the EF. Maybe they could improve it via firmware even more, but they seemed fairly comparable. At times, I think I could give the slight advantage to the native one, but that's a very slight advantage. I wouldn't say it's like an overwhelming advantage. Eye autofocus, you're gonna see my recording via the Atomos. I was using the A7 III. I thought the eye autofocus did a phenomenal job in terms of just tracking the eye. And obviously, if you're shooting portraits, you're not gonna need like someone to run out a camera, for example. The eye autofocus is tracking me, and it tracked me fairly well for a certain distance. And the eye autofocus reach for both lenses was about the same. Something to note, the Sony Zeiss is just a hair, you can step back just a hair further back. But with the Sigmas, these two, they're when you're about the same distance away, the eye autofocus switches off to just face tracking versus eye autofocus. So I thought that was very interesting. They're both around the same range and distance. But you'll notice I'm going back and forth, pacing back and forth. The eye autofocus is tracking me just the same for both cameras. Sorry, both lenses. Then I did some center lock-on AF tests. I think this is where I run into the camera. It's not the best test, but I think they're fairly comparable with the results. So maybe, hopefully, the images you can see show me running towards the camera. You'll see the difference there. Again, it's probably not the best test indicative of its performance, but I think it's pretty decent. Okay, it's not. I wouldn't say it's like the actual Sony Zeiss version comparison, but I think it's pretty decent for both. Again, very similar performance. A question some folks have had is there 20 frames per second on this particular body? Sorry, with the lens, if you're using the Sony A9, I'll tell you right now, it's roughly 14 to 15 frames per second is what you're going to get from the lenses. So that's not bad. So it's 14 to 15 frames per second from both lenses, either the adapted one or the native one. I think this rolled out a while back when I was using the Sigma 120 to 300. So it's nothing brand new. So 15 frames per second is where we're at with this. Okay, now we're going to move on to video autofocusing. Now, with decent lighting, so I did another test. I hope I have this one here. So you'll see a comparison where I have both lenses set up. I think I'm using the Alpha 6300. I've got the same settings set up. I'll walk towards and away from the camera. I think I have like wide autofocus with face tracking enabled. You'll see that the focus is doing pretty good. I'll even dodge in and out of the camera. I actually thought the EF version did a slight better job than the native version, but it seemed just a hair better. But it almost seemed as if it wasn't a big difference. It was kind of one time the EF might go a little quicker, and then the native one will go a little quicker or slower. They all felt very consistent, and I think if you're recording and you needed to track a face, and let's just say you were in a sit-down situation, I think it would be adequate and it would lock on your subject. Now again, the video AF on the EF version is noisy with the MC11 adapter, so that's the caveat. That's like the issue with it. Then with low light, I did a low light. It was in a darker room. This time it was with the A7 III. And then, unfortunately, I couldn't do a side-by-side with the same camera. But I used the same camera. And you can see a side-by-side, and you can make the assessment for yourself. I can't really say one was better than the other. They both seem kind of in the same ballpark in terms of performance. It wasn't amazing, to say the least. I mean, obviously, it's very low light, so I can't really judge that. Then when it came to just regular recording, and what I mean by regular recording, it's more I'm pointing the camera, the focus on one subject to another and moving back and forth from one subject to another. The autofocus in video is fairly slow, so it's not snappy. And I was in the faster and responsive speeds on the camera. So if you need this thing to just like whip from one subject to another like this, it's gonna be slow. Now, this is something that's very interesting. I mean, because it has full-time manual focus control, since this focus ring is not fly-by-wire. What you can do, so for example, let's say I focus on something further away, and then boom, I quickly jump to something close to me. If it's really slow to autofocus, I can quickly kick it into gear by moving this focus ring, and then it'll snap quicker to the subject closest to me. Not ideal, but it's an option. I just wanted to point something out that I noticed about that, okay? So that's how it is. It's not quick. It's not native speed from boom, one subject, boom, another subject. It just isn't. Will it focus from one subject to another? Yeah, just not fast. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to the conclusion here that we are on at this point. So if you are just deciding between these two lenses, right? These are the only two you're looking at. We're not looking at the other ones right now. Get the native version. It's going to give you the best performance regardless, even with the noise factor. It's you definitely want to go that route. If these were your two choices. We'll talk about the other ones in the future video. So again, make sure you're subscribed for that. The updated firmware does make this one pretty good. Now again, I didn't test it before the firmware update, but in terms of just performance, it's pretty good. So if you have Canon cameras still, and you have Sony cameras and you're in between both systems, this isn't a bad choice if you're not into video. And that's it. That's the lens. It's very hopeful about the future Sigma lenses. I think the video side is going to be a little weaker for people if you're dependent on the video autofocus. But if you just need very slow focusing, it's not something that you need like very, very fast focusing. It should be adequate for most cases. But like I said, fast stuff, it's not going to be there, unfortunately, right now. Maybe a firmware update will improve it. But there you go. Make a decision for yourself, like which one would you go with? Let me know. I'm just curious in the comments below. Which one would you consider? Would you consider getting this or go with a different lens? Maybe the 55 1.8. If you do want to see a video comparison, make sure you let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button too. That helps out a lot great as well. But if you had to decide between, let's say, for example, the 55 1.8 and the Sigma, which one would you choose? I'd like to know. Let me know in the comments below. And again, a massive 50mm comparison review video will be out soon, so make sure you're checking in on that. Folks, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on the latest content. And with that said, I'm your host, That One Camera Guy, and I will catch you on the next video. Peace.
I left my heart in California. I let it go deep into the blue.